Hello and welcome everyone into my latest live broadcast. Just waiting for my video to there I am. Wow, I gotta trim that intro down. It's got a long delay there at the end. Today it is Tuesday, the 12th of September 2023. It is the second Tuesday of the month, and that means Windows updates have come out and been released from Microsoft for Windows 10 and 11. You will get those updates automatically by default, but if you want to go and grab them now, you can certainly get a headed jump start of the game and download those updates. They will require a restart of the computer to take effect. So again, every second Tuesday of the month, Microsoft releases updates, and that's what today is. September the 12th is our second Tuesday. Now, gotta make a couple little changes here to my OBS settings. Everybody, I hope, can see and hear me okay. And, oh, I see, I have not put myself the right screen here, so bear with me for just a moment. Get my YouTube studio open so I can see what's going on in the chat room. Welcome in everybody who's joined us in the chat room before the show started, eager in anticipating the show. Thank you so much for your enthusiasm. And let's see. Oh, we got a bunch of people in here, over 100 people waiting for the show to start. Lou Greenia says he's anxious to see the end result of this build. Yeah, I am too. I think it's going to look great. Now, I did order initially a black version of this case, but I don't think I'm going to build another one that's just simply a different color because of the cost of the motherboard, CPU, RAM, storage. And I'm already trying to unload what inventory I have now. So I think one example in this case, maybe possibly I'll do a Tower 200, which is a regular ATX size. So they have 3 different sizes of this case. The small one, which I showed you, where you're seeing now. The large Tower 500, which I demonstrated. I never took it out of the box. It's massive. I sent that back. It's too big. And then the Tower 200, which is sort of the, the princess and the pea, kind of just right in the middle. I think they're going to be hard-pressed to beat this one. I think the Tower 200 is going to be a little large for my liking. I really like how easy this is to work on. They've made everything super easy to access. And Thermaltake, they're not making much money on these cases. I can't believe how inexpensive these sellers are, like $100 or less for the case with the glass and the fan. And I mean, it's a heck of a deal for all the material that you're getting, especially when you compare it to other manufacturers and companies like Fractal Design can charge you for as much or more than this and give you nowhere near as much material. However, there's an aesthetic that's at play in many cases. When we're talking about the computer case, sometimes it's all about the way it looks. Like if we take a look at the robot's foot or we look at the Apache helicopter, it becomes all about the aesthetic. And so we have different reasons for building machines. Sometimes we want something unique and exclusive, and other times we want something extremely powerful and affordable. Sometimes we want something very portable. Sometimes we want something massive that demands people's attention when they walk in the room. So the beautiful thing about the whole PC industry, as far as being a hobbyist or being a technician, is all of that variety always keeps it interesting and generally keeps us from getting bored with the same stuff over and over again. Now, of course, when you're working in a company and you're working on the same hardware, well, not much can be done about that, but you'll get really, really, really good at working on that hardware blindfolded. So there's a good side to that. You don't want to do that for too long, but then generally the company will upgrade the machines every 2 or 3 years anyway. So there'll be a little bit of diversity in working on the machines for a corporate entity. Being a field service technician, you work on whatever in many cases. Or if you're authorized through Dell or HP, something like that, then you're going to work on a whole series of machines they've made over the years. And that, of course, keeps it interesting with certain idiosyncrasies from one manufacturer to another that you get accustomed to expecting. which means you can almost work on anything from them, even if you've never seen it before, because it'll follow a lot of the same form and function as many other previous models. Usually, there'll be some similarities, techniques, and how they design the machines. Let me see why my phone beeped here. And once again, welcome everybody in. I don't know why the phone beeped. Very strange. I'll tell you what. Let's give a shout out to some folks joining us here in the live chat. Andy Kane says hello, as does Gil Garcia. Chris Johnson and Patrick Russo saying hello. Terry says hello, as Gerhard and Shane Perkins, as well as Marlena, the camera girl. She's in there. Bradley Morris joins us. Paul O'Brien says hello. Bajan Guy says hello. Construction says hello. Essential Working Too Hard. Steve McCure, Peter, Chris Smith, Mark Gaines, Dan Nilsson, Shamim Kajviras, all saying hello. Shamim joining us from Sweden. Gary Tatum and Nick Poverman, Tim Teal, all say hello. Davis Parsons says hello. Mats Olof joining us from Sweden says hello. Tim Too Much, Bill Knott, Paul Ho and Patrick Manny. Paul Howe. Linda Hudson and Raj D, Joseph Hawkins, 55 Stain Dude, all say hello. Ben Laird with a £5 super chat contribution joins us from Scotland, says hello. Old Man 55 and Doman 2000, Arnold Albert and Planet Cryos all say hello, and Planet Cryos contributes $2 in super chat and says, let's get our carry on. Sounds like something you'd say when you're boarding a plane. There's my friend Ron Hillier. I haven't seen Ron in a few days. He says, hey, brother, I'm actually awake. Well, I hope so, or you're sleep typing. Good to see you. Glad you've joined the rest of us during the daylight hours. Apparently, the whole vampire thing hasn't quite taken full control yet. Now, we started part one with prepping the motherboard, which includes installing the CPU, using a temporary air cooler. Nothing wrong with the cooler the CPU comes with. We're just going for a certain look that requires a liquid cooler for that look. We don't need the liquid cooler technically, but we do need it visually. We desire it. So we used an air cooler to just test the machine outside of the case, get Windows installed, get the BIOS updated. We've installed the RAM. I installed the wrong RAM by mistake. OLOy makes RGB and non-RGB, DDR4 and DDR5, and it all looks the same. The devil is in the details. You got to pay very close attention to what you're ordering. Not only did I mistakenly put in non-RGB, but when I replaced it with what I believed to be 64 gigs of RAM was actually 32. So this company, sometimes the RAM manufacturers will have a complete different look or design between their models of RAM. OLOy more or less carries the same design throughout DDR4 and DDR5 as far as, you know, just casually glancing at it, you can't tell what it is. I can't tell if that's RGB RAM or non-RGB RAM the way OLOy has designed it, and I cannot tell if that's DDR4 or DDR5, or if that's 16 gigs each, 32 gigs each, or 8 gigs each, without actually doing a much closer inspection. There are other brands of RAM like G-Skill where I can just look at it, tell you exactly what it is, because they've got so many different heatsink designs and colors in their product families. So if you want to buy the OLOy RAM, it is very inexpensive. I've not had a stick of it go bad yet. I've not used a lot of it, but I have been using it for 2 or 3 years now on occasion. And I recently made the plunge and invested in about 10 more boxes of DDR4 and DDR5, mixture of RGB, non-RGB, for future builds from OLOy, because the price was so good and the RAM is very attractive. It is a little bit taller. They do say it's low profile. I've seen lower profile. However, the other RAM I was using, the Team Group, nothing wrong with it. They haven't done anything wrong. I don't know, just looking to mix it up a little bit. So the Team Group RAM I've been buying does not have RGB, and I wanted this specific look of RGB because it will look like a lightsaber if I make it static in one color. Unlike other RAM, which has little squares or cubes or different designs, this has what they call a blade of RGB, which is ideal because the lightsaber theme that's on the SSD from Seagate is a blade. So that all just matches perfectly. And initially I thought I was buying white RAM, but it turns out it's silver. And it was reflecting the white. So that's why I was saying white. But that silver RAM that OLOy sells does not have an RGB. They do sell the RGB in the black color and non-RGB in the black color. And there's DDR4 and DDR5 with the same heatsink. So pay very close attention. But as to whether or not I recommend OLOy RAM, I mean, I haven't used it enough to swear by it, but I'm confident enough to start selling it and putting it in systems that I sell lightly at first, just to see what kind of customer feedback I get, if any. And then, you know, after dipping a toe in the water, waiting about 6 months, if there's no issues, then it's full steam ahead. Paul O'Brien contributes €2 and says, Camera Girl, that was a great massage. What? Message or massage? I don't know. Something you're not telling me? Gregory Howard said that Thermaltake Tower 100 Black Edition is $80 today at Amazon. That's a bargain. That is $80 for the Black Edition of this case. You'd be hard pressed to find a case of better quality or easier to build in, whether it's ITX or MATX or ATX. Regardless, you'd be hard pressed to find a competitor in that spot. So, you know, if you want something unique, if you want something that's someone's going to see that and it's going to be a conversation piece because they likely have never seen this case before. Very affordable, totally doable. And you don't have to put the liquid cooler on it. It only allows for like a 120 or a 140 cooler. And I guess you could put a big fan down here, but I don't know why you'd want to. That seems like a waste of a fan, unless you were looking for more RGB. I suppose that might be a reason to do it. There's really nothing down here we need to cool, and the power supply is going to be drawing air in from underneath the computer. So I've seen people put fans here to blow air straight down. I also don't think blowing air that direction would be a good idea, since our fan up here is going to be blowing air out the top. So if I was going to put a fan down here, I would have it blow air up, especially if I had a graphics card right here. Let it go over the graphics card, go through the radiator, and out through the top. So it seems like lately when I've been doing these builds, they take about 3 videos to do. I was getting ready to start talking about that and got sidetracked. It usually seems like the pattern lately has been at trying to keep the videos around 2 to 3 hours. And so because of that, prepping the board is one full show. That's a lot of work. Then putting the board into the case and prepping the case. Some cases you just take a panel off. There's not even any screws. Other cases like this one, we've got a bit of dismantling to do. And since it was unfamiliar to me, wasn't exactly quick about it. So that eats up a lot of time just getting the case ready to be installed and prepping everything, getting the board installed. And that usually ties up the next 2 or 3 hours. And then finally, today's show, the third part, will be just the final cabling everything up, putting a liquid cooler on, and firing it up. There is one other part that I don't film, and that's the cable management. It's really nothing to see, and it's nothing you can really duplicate because your parts will be different than mine. All you need is one different part, and suddenly the cable management that I use won't apply to you. So what I'll often do when I have time is just bring the computer back up onto the bench and show it to you and spin it around when it's complete. You know, once that cable management's been done and the panels are put back on, And typically, if it's going to be available for sale, that's when I say, hey, floodgates are open. If anybody wants to reach out to me and purchase it, no reasonable offer is refused. I want to take care of my viewers first and foremost before I sell it to some stranger. And, I'll be happy to work with you. You must be in the United States. Shipping this overseas is very expensive. The likelihood for damage is pretty high. And then you're going to have to pay your government a ransom or a tariff before they'll release the package to you. And they will not determine what that ransom will be until the package arrives and they inspect it. They determine that only when they've inspected it. So now, whether or not their inspection means they're going to open it up and look at it, or they're just going to look at the way bill and take a look at what's on the customs form. Most cases, they just look at the customs form and they have some amount of tax they charge you. You have to pay that tax as an import fee. And then when you do pay that import tax, and usually you have 30 days in most cases, and if you don't pay it within 30 days, it gets sent back to me. So it's a real hassle. But I do encourage you, if you're interested in it and you're outside of the US, or even if you're in the US, build it yourself. It's very rewarding, very simple to do. Just handle the parts the way you see me handle them. And take your time, don't rush. Enjoy your build, and you'll have yourself a really nice, attractive, fast, reliable computer that will last many years without any issues, statistically speaking, compared to buying something that's either a system integrated, system like Dell or HP, where it's all assembly line manufactured with no pride, or rolling the dice with some local builder that you perhaps don't know. Maybe they're good, maybe they're not. Maybe they're selling you cheap parts to make a higher profit. That's very, very common. If you want control of the quality of the parts, the performance of the parts, the reliability of the parts, build it yourself. No one will build it better than you can. And then if there's any problems with it or you ever want to upgrade it, you won't hesitate because you're not intimidated by getting in there. You're the one who put it together. So it's nothing for you to open it up and make any changes or do any repairs. It likely won't need any repairs, but should it need repairs, you could totally handle it. Follow Brian says he takes food stamps. Dorado Systems says hello. He says, I'm walking in my local area to put flyers up with my PC laptop repair business. Yes. Good for you. And here's the thing. A lot of people who are sitting at their keyboards going, I want to start a business. What software do you use? Or what chair should I buy? What tools? These people, to me, aren't serious about starting a business. What Dorado Systems is doing is the very first thing you need to do. First and foremost, if you are dead serious about wanting to start your computer repair business, or you are dead serious about drumming up more business, you've got to pound the pavement. You've got to go out there and knock on doors. Even at the very least, leave flyers. If you already have a client, stop by their neighbors and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, I'm a computer technician, and I service the folks next door, and just wanted you to know I'm in the neighborhood, and if there's ever anything you ever need computer problems, computers issues resolved, I'm your guy. Here's my business card. It's no pressure. You're not twisting anybody's arm. Just introducing yourself, letting people know you exist. Maybe they don't need you today. Maybe they're even annoyed that you bothered them today, but it could be days or weeks, perhaps even minutes later, something happens with the computer, and the first thing they'll think about is, where's that guy's card? Or you might even encourage them to speak to the neighbor that you work for to get their opinion. Like, don't take my word for it. Ask your neighbor. Make sure your neighbor's okay with it, but I can't imagine they wouldn't be. Just say, hey, would it be all right if I used you for referrals for your neighbors? Also, don't be afraid to leave extra business cards with any existing customers to say, listen, word of mouth and, referral is really the best way I get business. Can I leave some extra business cards with you? And if you know anybody in conversations with friends or family that mentions they have a computer problem, would you mind if I left you a few extra cards? You don't have to give them away. Put them around the house so when you lose one. I mean, I've had people say, I was going to call you, but I lost your card. So I don't leave one card with people anymore. I leave a minimum of 3. But I say, here you go. There's 2 extras. Don't put them all in the same place. And then, of course, if you know anybody that needs repaired, please give them out. And if you need more, just let me know. I'm always happy to give out more business cards. But the bottom line is you have to get the work. Before you're worried about what chair or what tools, what certifications, that's all a complete procrastination from people who say they want to do it, but they don't actually want to do it. The people who actually want to do this work, they understand you have to go and get the work. Then, depending on what work you've got, that will determine what tools you're going to need to do that job. And for every job you do that you don't have the tools, you go and buy the tools to complete that job. And in a matter of weeks or months, depending on how much you're working, you're going to develop a toolkit that's unique to the kind of repairs that you're doing in your area, rather than trying to forecast what you're going to need and spend money that you don't need to spend for tools you don't need and you aren't going to use. So the reality is, the first thing you need to do is find the work. That is half the battle. Never mind your certification, never mind your tools, never mind your chair. None of that will matter if you don't have any work to do. So your absolute focus needs to be on get at least one thing to fix. Once you have that, then determine what you need to do that repair and go get those tools that are specific to the job you've got in front of you. And if you do that after a few jobs, you're going to have 90% of the tools you're going to need for all your future work. And then if a company is hiring and you want to go work for somebody else, if the company requires a specific certification, then get it. Otherwise, that certification will never be demanded of by a residential customer. And if you say you have it, it'll never be verified by a residential customer. Just take your word. You could put it on your business card. I have these certifications. Never once has anybody ever checked. If you're going to an employer, however, you'll often need to provide them with a copy of the certification. But there's no point in you spending the time and the money to achieve these certifications when an employer doesn't require it. It's just a complete waste of time and money. The certification industry is a profit industry. They'll want you to update your certifications because they're charging you every single time for it. And that is an industry, a multi-billion-dollar industry just in doing certifications. So forget about selling computers. Selling certifications is good money. There's an old expression that during the 1800s, during the California gold rush, all these people went out to California to get rich. And most of them didn't get rich. Very few got rich. Except the people who consistently got rich were the people that were selling the pickaxes and the shovels. Those people all got rich. People actually doing the hard work of digging and sifting through the dirt to find gold. Very few of those people, very few of them got rich. And very few of them even broke even. But yeah, selling the shovels and the pickaxes, that's where the money was. And these certifications, that whole business of certifications, some serious money in that. So depending on why you're getting into the career, if you're in it for money, if you're in it for the puzzle solving, which is what I like, you could probably make more money in certifications. It's probably not as fun, but maybe for you it is. Carl says, Carey, thanks so much for your videos. You've given me the confidence to build my own PCs with my own PC with the parts that I want. Right on, Carl. It's addictive. You know, once you build that first one, you're going to want to build another one. So always take your time and enjoy your build. It's very rewarding. But I'm telling you, Dorado Systems going out there, putting flyers on doors, you don't even have to interact with anybody. You just stick a flyer on a door. Most of those are just going to get thrown in the trash, but all you need is one. So they're very, very cheap to print out, you know, your own flyers. You don't need to go to Kinko's anymore and pay some printing press to do it for you. You can do it at home with your printer. It's cheap, and it'll cost you nothing to get out there and do the physical walk. Yeah, it's good for you too. Just wait till it's cooler outside. Thankfully for us here in Phoenix, I don't think we're going to break 100 degrees Fahrenheit today. I think the hottest it's supposed to get is 99. So I'll take it. And I will end up having to go to my clients later tonight and do some work. I've been waiting for the heat to die down because they turn the AC off at night. It's miserable in there. So now that we've got one cool day, and yeah, 99 degrees is a cool day, especially after the sun goes down. It'll cool down, probably be in the upper 80s, mid 80s. And that'll be a nice, pleasant time to go out there at night, away from the traffic, out of the heat, and do some maintenance over there I need to get done. I've been postponing it or procrastinating it because I don't want to do it in 115 degree weather when at night it's still 105. So in any event, my work for me is cut out for today. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat here. Andy says A+ certifications are a really good place to start applying for positions. Not if the place you're applying for doesn't acknowledge it. You know, the idea behind a certification is that you can pass a test, right? But the reality is you may not be very good at diagnosing or repairing. The piece of paper doesn't measure your skill level. You don't get like experience points that we can measure you against somebody else. If an employer requires it, then absolutely it's worth getting any certification an employer requires if that's a position you're seeking. But if an employer doesn't request it and you're not working, I think it's extraordinarily foolish to spend money you don't have to get a certification you don't need when that same time and energy could be spent on either going door to door to see if anybody needs computer repair or sending out application after application and doing interview after interview. The more interviews you do, the better you'll get at it. Don't be discouraged if you don't get calls back. It's normal. Doesn't mean you didn't interview well, but you will, through repetition, you'll get more comfortable, more confident, and you will interview better. And the only way you can interview better is to go through more interviews. So the downside, I suppose, of getting hired on your first interview is that the next time you need to interview, you're probably going to be starting at square one again. And it won't matter what certifications you have if you're not interviewing. So I think the personal skills, being able to communicate effectively, clearly, and being somebody that people want to work beside. If you seem really, really intelligent but annoying, they likely won't hire you because they don't want to be around somebody like that 8 hours a day, regardless of how qualified you are. I've seen quite often employers hire people less qualified because they think working with that person will be more enjoyable. So I think too much focus and attention is paid to numbers and statistics, when in reality, not very many employers measure by that anymore, other than the statistics that they put on you as they measure, you know, are you showing up every day for work? Are you on time? How long is it taking you to do whatever it is they've hired you to do? And does that fall within the average that they're looking for? And based on that, will likely determine how long you'll be with the company, what opportunities that might give you for growing within the company, for promotion, or whether or not they're going to let you go. None of those certifications, and there's no piece of paper that's going to replace the way you're going to be measured by your employer. There are still some employers that require those pieces of paper. And if those companies are hiring, then you definitely want to make sure you've got that piece of paper. Otherwise, you're wasting everybody's time by applying if you don't meet the minimum requirements. But by no means does that piece of paper necessarily make you more qualified for the job or guarantee you'll have the job any longer if your performance isn't up to par or your skill level isn't matching what is implied by that piece of paper. So I wouldn't put too much weight into certification unless the employer you're working for does. Otherwise, it's just an industry trying to convince you of value to get your money, the same as every other product being sold. David Ice says hello from West Virginia, where it's raining and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Barry Klein said he disagrees with me about certifications. Yeah, well, you're allowed to disagree. He says they're very important. Let me send you a brochure about certifications that I offer. They're not overly expensive. Barry Klein certifications are available. I see what you did there. Yes, people will have you believe their certifications are very valuable. Sometimes in companies, in my experience, that require certifications, it's because they have some kind of a formal relationship with the company that offers the certification. So for example, if you have a, forget what they call it, but if you have like a Microsoft heavy software presence in a large corporation, then you likely have your own dedicated Microsoft representative assigned to your company. What did they call those people? That when you'd have a Microsoft representative assigned to you, to your company? What were those reps called? Yeah. Well, anyway, so when you're dealing with a company on this massive level, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. That wasn't a liaison. It was a dedicated representative. Well, she says liaison, but I remember it being called something else. Would you mind checking that door? Yeah. It's sometimes in the contract negotiation that if you're going to utilize this at this level, then all of the support people that'll be working on our equipment need to have our certification. And so then it's not the company's idea that you've got to have the certification. The company's individually not saying this certification has value. They're obligated that anybody that's doing work on that equipment has to be certified because that's the arrangement that's been made with the vendor, which could be Microsoft, it could be Intel, it could be, well, back when I was doing this in 95, it was IBM. And, you know, you'd be asked questions like, what does an IBM error code 3095 mean? That would be on the test. But if you didn't work with any IBM equipment, it's a proprietary code that only means something to IBM equipment. Why would I know the answer to that? We don't have IBM equipment, but it was on the test because IBM was a sponsor of the test. What did we get? Oh, is that the HX99G?
HX77.
HX77G.
Correct.
All right. Well, it looks like, is that bare bones or?
No, it's
16 gig and 512, pretty standard. All right. Well, it looks like we've got a review coming up next week, or maybe even this Friday.
I'll put the thumbnail.
Yeah, get to work. Camera Girl does all the thumbnails for our videos here. She's been going through some of the old content and fixing it up, cleaning it up, replacing the thumbnails, modernizing it, retitling them with more. Must be good. And just sort of optimizing the titles so they're more clear. Sometimes I titled things like finishing up 3 builds. What builds? Are they Intel? Are they AMD? Are they 9th gen or 7th gen or, right? And I always thought I'll go back and I'll fix it later. And often that was open-ended because I wasn't quite sure during a live video exactly what I was going to do. So I needed to fill in something as a placeholder. And in many times, I never went back and filled it out. So she's going back through all that now. It's a massive library of over 1,500 videos here that we've done over the years. And so her work is cut out for her. Carl says, thanks for the shout out, Carey. I did build more than one. Hey, that's awesome. It's pretty common too. Imagine Guy said, there's no need to defrag Synology hard drives, right? We won't defrag hard drives. If the option to, hold on a second. I guess we're having a delivery there. What was I talking about? Oh, defragging Synology drives. So depending on how you formatted your drives, if you're using NFS file system, if you're using the B-tree file system, that varies. What's going on? Big box? No idea what's going on out there. I will generally defrag my Synology drive once a year. And the reason I do it is not for performance. It's so that if a recovery is necessary, data recovery services like $300 data recovery are more likely to recover data that's contiguous. Recovering data that's, what's going on out there?
So the box is bigger than me. This guy's nice. Big and
I got to see what this is. Hold on.
it's the shadow.
Okay, I guess the folks over at Be Quiet sent us another Shadowbase 800DX. I thought they were just going to send me that one little circuit board. And then we have something that's come from Newegg as well. I guess it's a good thing over here. Oh, this is the Be Quiet Pure Loop 2FX all-in-one cooler. But I wanted to use the bigger cooler on that giant case. I think that cooler is going to look tiny in there. But I appreciate the folks at Be Quiet for thinking of us. That was very kind of them to send another one. Let me just get this box indoors here. Yes, these shows are live. If you doubted for a second, you should know for sure now that these are live shows. And so sometimes we do get these interruptions from deliveries, but I wasn't expecting anything that big. I knew that I had a mini PC coming, but I didn't know that these packages from Be Quiet were on their way. And again, a shout out and a thank you to the folks at Be Quiet for thinking of us. When I did the build in the Be Quiet Shadowbase 800DX, I had to set it aside because the front RGB isn't working, and I think the little circuit board's gone bad. And I could just swap the circuit board off of this other one. Or we could just turn off RGB altogether. But I thought we would use RGB all-in-one cooler, RGB RAM, and then use the RGB, that's on the front. It's pretty subtle. And then that would be a system that we can offer for sale, but it'll be very expensive to ship it. As Camera Girl mentioned, the box is big and heavy. It's probably $200 to ship that from here to the East Coast, if not very close to it. And that's going to put a pretty big dent in the overall cost of the machine. I want to thank those of you who have reached out to me asking about machines that I have available. There are still more available, and I want to give you guys an opportunity to have a piece of the channel and have a good deal, honestly, except for the very newest machines, the 13500s I'm building. Those I want to just break even on, but I'll probably cover the shipping. With regards to I got a bunch of 10th gen, 10700, 10850K, 10900K. Those I will let go for less than what I paid for them, obviously, because they're about 2 years old. They haven't been used very much. They mostly just sit around and collect dust. But if you're looking for a good deal and you're in the United States, even if you wanted to work out a payment plan with me, I could hold it for you until it's paid in full, and then I'll ship it to you. So very easy to work with, as long as you're reasonable. And we will deal with all that privately in email. We won't do open negotiations out in a public forum. I might do something for you that then other people are going to ask me to do for them. If you did it for him, so if we work out a deal, it's between you and reason. All right, so it's out there. When October rolls around, anything that has not sold, I will sell locally to just the general public. They won't know that it's me, but I will list them for sale, sell them locally, and somebody in the Phoenix area is going to get some great deals if anything's left. But for those of you who have reached out, thank you for reaching out. And for those of you who've been thinking about it, well, stop thinking about it and reach out. You know, got to be curious. If it's something you're interested in, you might just be able to afford it if that's the thing that's holding you back. Again, all that's required is you've got to be in the United States. Of course, the offer's got to be reasonable. I'm already going to be losing money on them, so I'm just trying to mitigate my losses. But I also like to help people. And like I said, I would rather help one of my viewers than just some complete stranger that happens to catch a really good deal on Craigslist or Facebook or wherever we sell them. So I'm hoping I won't have any to sell to the public. I really want these to go to the viewers. But if the viewers don't want them, or for whatever reason, I do have to get rid of them. Because I got other stuff I got to bring in. David Moore says he's from Poole in the United Kingdom. Right on. Well, welcome in, David. Alhaj Tepej says hello from Slovenia. Slovenia. Can't remember. Barry Petcher says, I do new builds in England and I don't do cable management unless the customer demands it. Then I charge £50 for it as it takes so long. That's fair and reasonable. When you're building a computer that doesn't have a case window, cable management's almost a waste of time. And when it comes to cable management, like on something like this, where we can just shove all the cables back here and cover it up without any formal cable management, as long as it looks good from this side, you know. But for me, I have a certain standard that I expect of myself. And whether I'm building a machine that's going to be given away to a veteran, or I'm selling a $5,000 computer, or the $10,000 big beast build, or a $500 used machine, they all go through the same rigorous nitpicking demands that I place upon myself because my reputation's on the line. You know, I don't want to say, well, that computer was cheap, so it's not going to get all of my effort. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the same way consistently across the board so people know what to expect from me. It's not like because somebody paid more, they got a better job done. You will get the same equal level of job being done, just that the value of the parts would be higher. Not an easy way to make a living by building computers and selling them. And one of the primary reasons for that is people can go to Best Buy, they can go to Office Max, they can go to Walmart and go buy a computer that's already built. So unless you are customizing a computer to the specific needs of a specific person, trying to sell a configuration that you've come up with is more difficult because that may not be the configuration people want or the people that are shopping or looking for. So the best way to build computers is to, find a customer that says, I'd like you to build me a computer, and then you work out with that customer what they want to have built, and you give them a price on what it's going to cost. And when they agree, if they agree, you collect at least 50% up front because customers may change their mind. They might decide they don't want to do it anymore, or they might decide Instead of Intel, they want to go AMD, and now you've got to return all these parts that you purchased and buy different parts. So basically, you know, that's a lot of labor you're not going to get paid for. But at least when you have that 50% deposit, more than likely the customer will see that through. Very rarely does it fall back the other way, but it can. And that's why you absolutely need that deposit. Unless it's a customer you've been working with. That's a different case, obviously, if it's somebody you know and trust. Dwayne Blackwelder's been a member now for 10 months. Right on, Dwayne. He says, I'm glad to be part of this channel. Thank you, Carey, for all you do to make this channel the best. Well, hey, it's really the community that makes this channel so amazing. I've been watching the chat room lately, and I've dealt with a little bit of harassment that I haven't had to deal with in a while. And I was mentioning yesterday's video that I'm thinking of making the chat room members only, not moderators, but paid members in order to reduce the chaos in the chat room. I'm on the fence, but do know I'm watching it, and I'm, depending on how today goes in the chat room, I may end up in future videos saying, okay, people who aren't members can still watch the videos. They can still leave comments. But since some harassment's coming from people that are not members, and my tolerance for it lately has been reduced because I'm trying to produce a lot of content here. And if I feel like people are being disrespectful, then I just make it members only. So I want you to know, I'm keeping an eye on that during the next couple days. If something happens, my fuse is about that short. And if it ever happens, you'll understand why it happened, right? That if it says you can't chat because you're not a paying member, you'll know that's because the harassment has continued. I'm not made up my mind exactly what I want to do yet, or whether or not I allow moderators as well as members. I'm not even sure YouTube will let me do that. It may not be an option. So I really want to leave everything the way it is, and I just want the disrespect to go away. It's unjustifiable. But I just wanted you to know, what happens in the chat room this week may determine the future of chat room access coming soon, or not. If everything goes back to the way it was, then we're fine. All right, so I guess we can start. I've got the air cooler that we had on there temporarily. That's been removed. The CPU has been cleaned. I've left everything on the bench here. Pretty much, aside from moving some things left or right, everything is still on the bench the same way we left it on the video from Saturday. And the step that we're waiting on right now is to install our all-in-one cooler, which I have down here. Now, I've decided, suppose I didn't decide it, Camera Girl had decided that I was going to use this cooler. She felt that Thermaltake's cooler in Thermaltake's case was the best looking cooler of this size that we were looking at. This wasn't the cheapest one, wasn't the most expensive. I thought a different cooler was more attractive. She disagreed. So we're going with the Thermaltake. Now, I've not had any particular issues with Thermaltake coolers. It's really just an aesthetic. It's the way it looks. And we're confined to that 120 or 140 millimeter size. So this is a 120, I believe. Yeah, the TH120 with RGB. And since we have the big glass window here with the RGB RAM, that RGB SSD, and the RGB cooler, it should be eye-catching, but hopefully not so much RGB that it's just what we call rainbow puke, too much. I think this will be just the right amount. Iron Tigers contributes $5 in Super Chat. Hey, thank you, Iron Tigers. Thank you for all your build videos and tips over the years. You inspired me to build my own. I've since built over 5 personal computers for himself and for friends. It's very rewarding, isn't it? I'm so glad that we've had another convert. John English says he's surprised they still make 120 millimeter liquid coolers. Oh, sure. Yeah, because there are smaller cases that don't have room for larger coolers. Not everybody is running an i9, you know. And I would be sad if cooler manufacturers had the attitude of a lot of enthusiasts that are kind of snobby and elitist, where they don't really factor in the variety of cases and budgets that people may be limited by. So having that freedom of choice is wonderful, and it may be something you never buy, but clearly enough people are buying them. There was about, I'm trying to think how many of these that, so we had some restrictions. I wanted it to be RGB and I wanted it to be white. And I think that left us 3, 4, or 5 to pick from. But if they were, any cooler of this size that was a liquid cooler, I think there's over a dozen to pick from. So there's no shortage of them. George Slyka with a $10 super chat. Thank you, George. Poorly Boy says, we all back the channel with Amazon link. Hey, I appreciate it. Amazon, in my video description below the video is a listing of all the parts. They all point to Amazon. That's where I'm buying them. Your super chat contributions, your memberships, that's all going into this channel. The reason why you're seeing this hardware is because I could afford to buy it. None of this hardware was sent to me for free by the manufacturer. I've got no affiliation or contact at Thermaltake or GameMax, the people making the power supply, or with the MSI, the people who make the motherboard, or OLOy, the people who make the RAM, or Seagate, the people who make the SSD. They have no idea who I am. I bought these parts the same way you would, and I'm building it live in real time and making mistakes in the process because that's exactly what you would do. So I'm trying to keep this as realistic as possible, and I'm not building, multi-$1,000 builds on a regular basis like some channels do, because they're all getting financed by some big sponsor. And they're effectively just making a big advertisement. The only advertisement I'm really making is to promote this community and to encourage you to build your own computer. Some people want one that I've built, which I never set out to do. When I created this channel, I wasn't trying to sell computers. But I guess I was naive, because of course that was going to happen, where people, for one reason or another, don't want to build it, they can't build it, don't have time to build it, or they just simply want something that I built. And I'm happy to accommodate them. I don't have any problem with it. It's just I have to keep the shipping within the United States. But back to those Amazon links, when you use any of my Amazon links in my video description to take you to Amazon, and then you literally make any purchase at Amazon, doesn't have to be what the link was specifically for, but the link takes you to Amazon. If you make a purchase in that same Amazon browser visit, much of what you purchase, I will likely make a small commission from 1 or 2%, and I won't know who you are. I more or less won't know where you are either. All I'll know is every 24 hours I get an update of what was purchased using my links, so that Amazon can tell me how much they owe me or how much I've earned in commissions. But I don't know who you are or where you are. So if you say, hey, can you check to see if you earned the commission on this thing I bought, I'm happy to look, but I have no way to verify it was you that was the one that bought it. It could be somebody else bought it. But it is an anonymous way to support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything any different. Nothing's different. The shipping's the same, the cost is the same, the tax is the same. The only difference is, because it was my link that took you to Amazon, that led to your purchase of anything, Amazon kicks me back a small commission. And those do add up. So if there's just normal stuff you buy from Amazon anyway, if you take a moment and use my link to take you to Amazon for the purchase you were going to do, it's still going to cost you the same. And it's an anonymous way to support the channel for things you were going to buy anyway, with no different cost. So that's how that works. And Amazon has another Prime Day coming up, October, I think it's about this time next month. I think October 10th and 11th. And they always put on these amazing deals. So I hate for people to get caught blindsided and, oh man, I wish I had put some money away. I would have bought that thing that they put on sale if I had known. So I'm telling you now, if there's something you got your eye on, shovel away that money now, so that when Amazon Prime Day comes, you can take advantage if it's on sale. Steve Mercure says, I like the Holzman built system that I bought. It just works, and it has for several months now. Well, I hope so. It's difficult to stay in business over 30 years if what you're selling isn't working, customers are pissed off and not coming back with more business. A lot of my customers are repeats, and that's the greatest compliment to me. But always glad to hear when computers continue to run. I don't normally hear anything. So when folks like Luke Greenia will pop in and say, just to let you know that system's running great, people don't normally do that. So it always tickles me. I enjoy that. Thank you for letting me know. Oystein joining us all the way from Norway. Welcome in, Oystein. He says, thanks for the link and the code to VIP CDK deals. I just bought Microsoft Office and Microsoft Visio for my mini PC. Yeah, well, that's another great sponsorship opportunity we have with VIP CDK deals. There are a lot of companies out there that sell Microsoft license keys, but they're not all equal. They don't all source their keys from the same place. They don't all have customer service of any level. So when I partnered up with VIP CDK deals, they had to meet my requirements with regards to guaranteeing the product keys, standing behind what they're selling, being reachable if you need to reach them for any reason, for the issue with the sale or the activation. And the vast majority of companies that are selling these product keys cheap, they're not going to talk to you. And, they're going to treat you like dirt because, okay, you gave us $8 or whatever it was, get lost. You're the one who screwed it up, not us. There's some really bad customer service out there. So it's been brought to my attention that there are other places you can buy product keys for slightly less. It's not going to be much difference. But my concern is, are you going to get a guarantee? I guarantee the product keys. And are you going to get customer service if you need it? In most cases, the answer to the question is going to be no. So if you find product keys that are cheaper, it's probably because you're going to gamble. You're not going to have any peace of mind. You're probably not going to have any customer service if you need it. And if that's worth it to save $1, well, you do you. But for me personally, I will pay a little bit more knowing if I'm getting peace of mind, customer service if I need it, and a quality product consistently. So, it's not all the same. Just because you see a product key at this price from this place and a product key, the same product key at a different price somewhere else, doesn't mean those are the two equal products. One may be a black market key, one may be a gray market key, one may be a retail key. And then with regards to customer service, most of them have zero customer service. I'll tell you, it was interesting. Folks over at Mint Mobile reached out to me recently and said, hey, would you consider taking us on as a sponsor? Mint Mobile is owned or partially owned by Ryan Reynolds. And they're a pretty big competitor for low-cost mobile cell service, $15 a month for cell service, unlimited. Not unlimited data, but unlimited calling and texting. I thought that seems like a good deal, right? It's not interfering or possibly questioning any reviews I'm doing, or I'm going to be biased because of Mint Mobile, because I don't review phones. And I said, oh, I'd love to work with Mint Mobile. What's your offer? And they said, well, we'd like you to make like a 1 to 2 minute intro video that you play in the beginning of all your videos. And then we'll give you a link. And then anytime somebody makes a purchase, a new customer signs up for Mint Mobile, we'll give you a commission. Okay. All right. So what are you going to pay me to make the video and to play the video? Oh, no, I don't think you understand. We'll pay you when you make a sale. Okay. So you're going to tell me how to make the sale, but you're not going to pay me for that. You only pay me if somebody actually buys. So wouldn't it be up to me to decide how I want to sell it? Well, I said, we think it'd be a good opportunity for you, for us, for your viewers, save a lot of money on their mobile service, doing it's kind of a win-win for everybody. And I said, working for you for free is a win for you. I get that. But yeah, I'm not going to be told that I need to make a video and how long it needs to be and how often I need to air it unless you're going to compensate me for that. I'm pretty sure they're getting paid to email me. But I don't blame them. I mean, you know, if they find someone dumb enough to go, okay, and somebody's going to work for you for free, why wouldn't you let them? It broke my heart because I was looking forward. T-Mobile recently bought Mint Mobile, and I like T-Mobile service. They're my carrier of choice, personally, my preference. And the trick with Mint Mobile is, in order to get that low rate that they advertise, you've got to pay for a year. So if it says $15 a month, then that's prepaid for 12 months. Then you get $15 a month. Or $25 a month, or whatever. They have different tiers. And those tiers are based on a 1-year prepayment, which could be very convenient, right? You don't have to be bothered with remembering to pay the bill every month. But their very close competitor that's been around forever is Boost Mobile. And Boost Mobile, you can also be on the T-Mobile network. And in some cases, Boost Mobile is still cheaper. And to be honest, I could sign up literally at any affiliate site online to make commissions if I wanted to sell based on purely a payment of commission only. But yeah, it was kind of disappointing that a company, a multi-million-dollar company like Mint Mobile wouldn't be so cheap. But again, if you can convince people to work for you for free, the worst they can say is no, right? So it's kind of saddened. I was hoping to be out here and be able to promote Mint Mobile and offer you guys a special deal, but none under those circumstances. Do you think I did the right thing? I'm sure they're a good company, and I'm sure the service is good, and I'm sure their, you know, prices are very competitive. Okay, now let's see how this thing is boxed up here. Peter VZ just contributed €1. Thank you, Peter, joining us from the Netherlands, if I recall. All right, so I've not opened this. Everything I film is live, unrehearsed, unscripted. Sometimes people wonder how often I get bad parts in the mail. Watch the videos and see how often you see me get bad parts. It's pretty rare. Maybe once a year I get something bad. Might even be once every 2 years. I think the last bad thing I got was a bad power supply and maybe a bad stick of RAM. That's been it. And in both cases, because they're brand new, I just send them back to Amazon and have it exchanged out rather than doing an RMA. If I do an RMA, I have to pay for the shipping back to the manufacturer. So if I'm within 30 days of my purchase, I just kick it back to Amazon. Returns are free. David Dix at Rock City PC with a $10 super chat says, before computers, I sold T-Mobile for 12 years. When they had my faves and free after 7. Oh, so you could have people that were your favorite people you call, and then free after 7 o'clock and nights and weekends. T-Mobile definitely stepped up the past few years. My 5G speeds are 1,500 megabits per second down and 140 up. Yeah. Yeah, I've been very, very happy with T-Mobile. Steve Mercure said, I think you did the right thing with Mint. They want your production time, a known audience, and they want to pay you nothing. Well, they only want to pay me based on the results I get them. And Commercials don't work like that. You're going to pay a marketing company to develop a commercial. You have to pay actors to act in the commercial. And then anytime you want to air the commercial, you pay the radio or the television station or even YouTube. YouTube's not airing those ads for free with no guaranteed results. But they like to think different rules apply to the hobbyist content creator because they're not, generally speaking, very savvy business-wise and pretty easy to take advantage of them. And look, they're not forcing me, right? If I say, yeah, I'll work for free, why shouldn't they let me? I'm just a little offended they asked, that they think I'm that dumb. But I still like the company. From what I know about them, I've never used their service, but I'm very happy with T-Mobile. And now that T-Mobile owns them, I don't have any qualms recommending them because they're on the same network. So I would expect the same service. But I'm not gonna dedicate time on my video specifically for them in exchange for, if I make a sale, I'll get a nickel, whatever it is. I just like to share with you a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes most content creators talk about. All right, so here's our instructions. They look pretty straightforward. It's just one page on both sides here. Ron Barnish says, if you go members only, will we still get ads before your stream? That's a great question, Ron. So likely the answer is yes. And the reason for that is when we do the members only videos, those are unique in that they're never available to the public to watch. If I were going to make the chat room members only, that means the public can still watch. So if I'm getting 20,000 people watching my video with no advertising revenue coming in, I can't sustain that. I wouldn't be able to make very many videos that way. I think nobody has asked more questions or had more anxiety about this concept than Ron Barnish. And I don't understand why Ron is so worried about it specifically, like nobody else. It's just over and over and over. He's got these questions that seems to have a lot of anxiety. And basically, I want to reassure you that what I'm trying to do is make sure that the audience we have that's interacting with me are here for the right reason. But I still want the content to be free for everybody to watch. And in order for me to make it free for everybody to watch, not just the members who are, paying for a good 50% of what it costs to make this content. In order for me to maintain that, I have to put the monetization on, or I have to go get a sponsor where I talk about razor blades for a couple minutes or some other product in order to cash a check from a company. There's going to be an ad somewhere, somehow this has to get paid for. And memberships, will they help? They help by about 50%. I still need another 50% just to break even. So I would leave the ads on so that regular viewers could watch it for free. Now, when it comes to members only videos, I generally leave the ad on, but it's just an ad in the beginning and an ad at the end. But if members are complaining to me about it, I'll turn those off because that's not generating much revenue for me because those are members only videos that don't get very many views. So I'm not making much revenue off of them. Also, people who sign up for YouTube Premium won't be watching ads. I signed up for YouTube Premium about a year ago and I haven't looked back. I don't have the patience for ads anymore. The ads on YouTube are getting ridiculous and they're paying less and less. And instead of just showing one ad, now they're showing 2 or 3. It's really aggravating. But yeah, I would suggest if you have any concerns as we move forward, talk to me about it privately. Send me an email and I can answer your questions more candidly and explain to you what's going on with the harassment. If there was a way that you could take the harassment for me, I'd be fine with that, but I don't think you'd tolerate it for more than a week. It gets pretty nasty. So just trying to find a way that I can keep producing as much content and still make it available to the general public. And it's not very many people, not the majority, just a handful of people that are being harassers. But that's all it takes to disrupt the entire process. And, you know, the other side of it is I just give up in frustration, just stop doing it, just say it's not worth it. So there's got to be a give and a take somewhere. But again, I'm happy to talk with you about it privately because you seem like the only one who's really concerned about it. And I'm sure after I talk with you, you'll realize it's really nothing to be. But if something does change that you don't like, certainly you're free to let me know. And I'll give you an opportunity to offer me another solution. If you can't offer me another solution, no, I don't know what choice I have. But we'll see how today's chat room goes. It's been fine today. Ron says, a lot of times I miss the first part of your stream. Well, I'm always live at, you know, if I go live, it's typically at 1 o'clock. It should be no surprise that at 1 o'clock Pacific time, if I'm going to stream, that's when I'm going to start most of the time, 95% of the time. So if you're late to the stream, it's not like you didn't know. Right? You know if there's going to be a live stream, it's going to be at 1 o'clock. You don't have to rely on notifications. And I do that for that reason. Elijah Dickens said, Carey, there's nothing wrong with Fair Exchange. I just turned 13 months of membership today. No problem. I love you, man. Well, thank you, Elijah Dickens. Again, it's there are some people that have entitlement, right? Because they've been getting the content for free, they think it's owed to them. And they also think they have authority that they don't have. And it's just, it's not productive. It's not helpful. And it distracts from the content. So somebody will say, well, you've been on 45 minutes and you've been talking about all this, but you haven't done any work. Well, this is exactly why. Well, I always will sort of do a monologue and tell you what's going on. Say hello to everybody. I think it's the polite thing to do. Going off on these tangents lately has been a lot about dealing with the harassment, letting you know what I'm dealing with, making you aware. If I seem like I've been a little on edge lately, it's because I'm forcing myself to do a show when perhaps I should be taking a day or a week off. But I feel obligated to my loyal viewers to not let those people get in the way. And then the next step is to simply make sure that the only people who are interacting with me live are the real supporters of the channel, the people who put their money where their mouth is. It's still something I'm debating about and going through in my own head. But I can assure you, if the harassment continues the way it's been, the decision's already made if that's going to happen. Today, we're off to a good start, though, and let's hope it stays that way. And then I won't have to react. Okay, so in the box, we have, you know, your standard packaging here, the way most liquid coolers are packaged in this sort of like egg crate kind of packaging here. Now, as I mentioned, this is a smaller cooler. It's a 120 millimeter cooler. I think they could have easily allowed for a 240 in here. There seems like there's room onto the side that we could have put a cooler vertically, but you certainly can on the Tower 200. But on the Tower 100, we are limited to this one spot right here for the cooler. I suppose we could put the cooler down at the bottom, but heat rises. That doesn't make any sense. It's really intended, if you're going to add an all-in-one cooler, put it up at the top. So looking in the box, we've got a little remote switch here for changing the RGB colors. Now, this is optional. If you have ARGB, as we do on this motherboard, we can control the colors through the motherboard software. But if you don't, well, you can manually control with the switch. That does mean you have to figure out a place where you can put that switch to access it, but at the same time, keep your cable management clean. It's a challenge. So we are not going to be installing that switch. There's our radiator and our water block. White fan, that's interesting that'll replace that black fan up there. I just realized they gave us a black fan. Why didn't they give us a white one? Clearly Thermaltake makes that. That fan is also not RGB, and this fan is. So we probably want the fan on the inside. Have the air push out this way. It's probably going to look best. And then finally, we have all the mounting hardware for the water block to mount it to behind this, the backplate for the CPU, etc. Everything else, it's an empty box. So we'll just set that down here. That'll be good. John says, what about the legit people in here? Well, what that means is the people that are legit but don't support the channel financially will still be able to enjoy the content. They just won't be able to interact with me live. You'll still be able to leave comments. That's just the collateral damage being caused by the bad people, the ruining it for everybody, as the expression goes. So, well, you think it's okay that I should have to tolerate harassment? So people I don't personally know in real life can continue to interact with me for free? Like that's nothing I ever promised anybody except for my members. The interaction is there to be a pleasant exchange. When it's an unpleasant exchange, then it's time to start qualifying people. And the best way I know to qualify the people is if they sign up for membership. I know they're here for the right reason. I realize there are people that can't pay for the membership for one reason or another, but I won't restrict the content. You'll still watch it. You just want to play, you're going to have to pay. You want to interact. And that I can guarantee is going to solve all of the issues. And it does mean that some people who've done nothing wrong, who can't or won't pay for any reason, won't be able to interact. But so what? The interaction is just icing on the cake as far as I'm concerned. It's something that's offered, but it's nothing that's owed. So if people want to abuse it, I don't have any choice but to restrict that offering to people that are deserving of it by supporting the show. And it does mean that there are innocent victims, if you will, but the content will still be available to you. You'll still be able to leave comments. And hopefully I don't have to do this, but as the channel continues to grow, it opens up the opportunity for anybody to disrupt. And as you see, I'm still talking about this. We're now nearly an hour in and I still haven't done any work. And if this was all just members only chat right now, this discussion would have been over. So this is the other thing. It's causing delays because somebody who's not supporting the channel financially is now got all this anxiety and concern and doesn't think it's fair, as though I owe them something, like what I'm offering isn't enough, and it's really offensive to me. So ideally, people appreciate what's being offered here. If they can support it, great. If they can't, I understand, and they should also understand that the people who do will get benefits, the people who don't get. What else to say? Now, when I restrict the content and I say you can't even watch the video unless you're a member, that's a different story entirely. And I'm not talking about doing that. Now, looking at this water block, I notice we do not have any pre-applied thermal compound, but we do have a piece of tape that's keeping that protected. And that keeps it clean from oils on your skin getting on this plate, along with any dirt or debris. So I'm going to leave that on, and we'll take off this protective material after we've got our mounting plate installed, we've got the radiator installed, and we put thermal compound on the CPU. This is the last thing. We'll pull that tape off, and then we'll secure it down. It should be pretty straightforward install. Now, as I'm looking at this, I'm trying to figure out what the best way this is going to be to go on. You know, I could mount the entire thing below with the fan on top. But given it's an RGB fan, we're really going to see it very well if we put the fan on top. So I could reverse it. I could go the other way, and I could place the radiator on top. I think. Or the final option is I can place the radiator down here, this fan here, and in theory, I could leave that fan if I wanted to, you know, for a push-pull configuration, but it likely isn't going to make more than a degree or two of difference in cooling. And it's one more part that can go bad. It's one more thing that can make noise, draws power. When it draws power, ironically, it generates heat. So I think this fan needs to come off, and then I can visualize best place for the radiator. And just looking here, I've got 4 screws under there. Get my glasses, and we're going to get this top fan removed. It could repurpose it somewhere else in the case, potentially. I mean, it could theoretically go down on the bottom. It's overkill. I mean, this is a 13500 processor. It's a 65 watt processor. So ideally, the cooling is going to be overkill for us. We don't need to have that second fan. Some people will say, well, I've got it. I want to use it just because I've got it. I'm not that way. I don't want to put in parts I don't need to put in. That's just more potential support phone calls in the future. Something's making noise. Oh, it's one of the fans. Which one is it? Now we've got to check more fans. And since the fan isn't even needed, it's an unnecessary support call that could have been avoided by simply not including it. So again, what people do as home users, you guys watching YouTube videos at home, feel free to do whatever you want. When you're in business and you have to deal with upset customers who want immediate service and expect it done for free under warranty, well, you might put limits on what you're willing to support. If somebody contacts me and says, you know, I want this really fancy, expensive computer, in most cases, I'll say, I'm not the right builder for you, because those are the ones that require the most support and are likely going to have the most amount of problems due to their complexity. And those customers that are spending all that money tend to be the most demanding. So it's actually, in my opinion, in my best interest to focus on cheaper, less expensive computers that aren't as complex and are far more reliable, not as finicky or fickle as some of the high-end stuff. But that's a judgment call, right? And it's just a decision I make. And that's just based on my experience and some of the things I've gone through with certain types of builds. So that we'll just set over here. So now I'm just curious if this is going to fit up on top. If I were to put this here, lower it down this way, will it fit? It's not going to fit. So putting the radiator on top is not an option, but we do have a lot of space from here to here. So in a traditional all-in-one radiator installation, like on a standard computer build, we would normally put the radiator under the lid, not on top of it. And then the fan will go below that, pushing air out this way. Yeah, that's going to be ideal. Now, I don't want to secure that radiator yet because it's going to be hard to put the fan on. So let's go ahead and put the fan on right now. Now, these all-in-ones, they're already pre-filled with the cooling liquid and they're sealed. So you don't have to worry about any leaks. At the same time, when they fail, they're not repairable. You just take them out, buy a new one. They usually last 3 to 5 years. We'll call it 4 years. Now, obviously, some people will get 10 years out of it. But just because your radiator's running 10 years later doesn't mean it's still full or that it's not clogged and not performing efficiently. And it's almost inevitable that the fluid inside will start to deteriorate with time. It'll start to evaporate with time, and that the equipment, the parts that the fluid is running over, starts to corrode and plug up. So people could say, well, you know, I don't know, Carey, I've had my liquid cooler for 10 years and it still runs fine. It's probably not running fine. it's probably doing a good enough job, but in all likelihood, it is not cooling the way it used to. And, you know, if you're not overheating, it's fine. But if you want the best cooling possible, you probably want to replace your liquid cooler every 4 or 5 years. In many cases, you have to. A lot of times the pumps just die. Maybe that'll change with time. Maybe they're getting better, but it's been pretty consistent. The NZXT Kraken I've got on the streaming build now is going on 4 years old. So I anticipate maybe another 2 years out of it. And like I said, even though the pump is running, the fluid inside is degrading, it's evaporating, and it is slowly corroding the inside. So we don't know how bad until we open it up. And once we open it up, it's done. I mean, there's probably some folks on YouTube that have opened them up and repaired them, but the labor investment in that and the mess it makes is far greater than just buying a new one and replacing it in time and money. But to each his own. Let me see, how is this going to go? And if we put this in, this will be the bottom. And we want the cable, think about this. We're going to blow air through the radiator, so we want this part of the fan facing outward. And how do I want to, that way? I think maybe something like, I think I had it right the first time. Something like this, perhaps. So when that goes in, these cables will run straight out through the back and we'll run the cables behind the motherboard. I think that's our orientation right there. And so I'm going to need some really long screws to put the fan in onto this side and then some really short screws to attach the radiator onto the case. So in this bag of parts, we should have said screws. Ralph Kirby says, Carey, check your email. I sent you something. Right on. Yeah, let me check it here in just a second. Let me just start this before I get too distracted. Thank you, by the way. A lot of different brackets here for different types of CPUs. You're not going to use all these parts. You're only going to use the parts necessary for the CPU you have. This little bag right here contains the long fan screw and the short radiator screw. So this bag, we're going to use every screw in it. I'm not saying that you will. I'm saying I'm going to for this build and the way that we're configuring it. It's very customizable, and so you may only need to use half of these screws depending on how you're doing your install. Scissors, scissors, scissors. You know, I have scissors somewhere. I don't see our friend Peter Laycock out there today. We'll give a shout out to Buster. He's probably going to watch this a bit later. And let me move this box out of my way. I don't recommend using an electronic screwdriver to tighten screws in general, unless you're really familiar with your electric driver. It's very easy to cross thread. And with these fans, the corners will start to bend long before the screw will stop turning. And you can strip out the soft metal of the radiator very easily. So I would turn them by hand. And we're going to start with these long screws. They do have a shoulder on them, and it does look like they'll at least stop when the thread reaches that far. But that may be too tight if you tighten them all the way down. Different manufacturers offer different lengths of screws and threads and depths. So I'm not quite sure if we can actually tighten these down, or in most cases, you definitely don't want to tighten them down. As I mentioned, it'll bend the corners of the fan, and it could strip out the threads in your radiator. I just want to get these four started. There are some things when you're building, you want the screws to be tight. Like when we put the water block on, we want that tight. But when we're putting fans on, we never want the fans to be on there super tight. If they're too tight, as I mentioned, it can warp the fan, which can cause your fan to fail early. It could increase vibrational noise when the fan cranks up when the system's trying to cool down. It speeds the fan up. These do feel like they are coming to a dead stop, though. So I wish every radiator or cooler manufacturer did this, because most of them don't. You have to just use your judgment to know when to stop. These make it pretty easy to know when to stop. They stop turning. Okay, that's when you stop. Don't force it any further than that. Just so it's snug, and that way you have that look going for you there. And then these shorter screws, they're going to go right up where that other fan was on top of the case. And let me, yikes, it's right in here. Just want to start two of these in opposite corners, and that'll hold it in place. Helps if you have three hands. Now, these screws are put into these long oblong slots so that you're able to adjust the radiator to the left or to the right. In some cases, you need to have clearance for the tubes. If it's too far to the left, it may prevent the side panel from going on. Generally, I'll center it, although it looks like all the way to the left is centering the radiator over the motherboard. Sometimes I'll center it into the slot. It depends. It varies on the radiator I'm using in the case that I'm putting it in. So there's not any one rule that I follow. It's mostly eyeballing it. It's a judgment call. This is aesthetic, right? I mean, the whole reason we're doing this is for the looks. So how we adjust it is just purely based on how it looks, and that's a preference. There's no right or wrong way there. It'll cool the same regardless. I think that's gonna look. Put that one in there, that one in there. Tighten down this one. And again, just get it so it's snug. Don't over tighten these. That is a soft material that these radiators are made from. Well, that's going to look really good. We're going to run these cables. For whatever reason, Thermaltake has given us like 3 feet of cable here. So we're not going to have any problem reaching anything, but it does add a bit of more cable management work coil that up and hide it. I'm going to bring that up through here. And then out through the back. Oh, that's kind of ugly. I want to do that. Well, I need to get it out of the way for now anyway, so I'll run it there, but there will be covers over the I/O ports. So that may be a downside for some people that want to access the rear panel a lot. I'm just looking to see if there's any cable management. I can hide this. It doesn't seem to be. So then this is going to be an RGB cable here, I'm guessing. And we'll run that through the same place. And get an idea of what that's going to look like. Now, for the Thermaltake writing to be right side up, has to cross over. Actually, doesn't look too bad. A lot of times when people install these, they put the hoses closest to the RAM, which would put our Thermaltake logo sideways. So if you look at the photos online, they show it installed this way. But we could put it on this way. It's not a real big difference visually. But now that the radiator's installed, we can work on figuring out which of these backplates we're going to use. And I'll check my email right now. I just wanted to get that secured. Free up the space on the bench. As I mentioned, we're not going to use this. I'll put it on my part shelf, and if I ever need a 120 millimeter fan, it's not like that's only going to work in a Thermaltake case. Somebody comes in and needs a fan. Got one I can use. Let's take a look. $25 from Ralph Kirby. He says, for the channel. Well, thank you, Ralph. $10.35 and via PayPal via Thomas Tidwell. Thank you, Thomas Tidwell. And Davis Parsons with a $25 Amazon gift card. All right, so Davis Parsons and Thomas Tidwell and Ralph Kirby. Thanks, guys, for supporting the channel. I appreciate you very much. Oh, what is this? Oh, Be Quiet says they are shipping a 280 millimeter radiator to me. Oh, maybe that's what's arrived. He says they didn't mean to send it to me. It was sent by mistake. They meant to send me a 360 millimeter, which is what I requested. And he says he's not expecting me to have to use that in a build video, but I will use it. I just won't use it on that build. $25 from our friend Luke Greenia out there in Vermont via PayPal. Thank you, Luke. Thank you to email at Be Quiet for continuing to consider us with product reviews. And thank you to everybody who supports the channel, so we don't have to count on companies sending us stuff. We can go and buy the stuff we want to review. I reached out to Fractal Design and I said, be happy to feature any of your cases. And they said, no, we're good. Okay. I could still buy a Fractal Design case and feature it on my channel, but they're not going to participate with me. That's fine. They're not my favorite design-wise, but they're built well. So I don't like having to be at the whim of the manufacturer, just like you. When you want to build a system, you go and buy the parts you want, right? And that's what I want to do here. I just want to do the same thing people at home do, but back it professionally and follow through the process in a professional way. That is how I do it in the business. Show you guys the differences and explain to you why those differences exist, not only for your own benefit, but if you're considering going into business, understand that it's a little different than just building for yourself when it comes to liability, accountability. Elijah says, I get offset with live streams, so my contributions get lost sometimes. Well, I hope I'm always acknowledging your contributions. And if there's ever a time where I've missed them, please let me know. I always want to shout out a thank you to anybody who supports the channel financially. That means a lot to me. Will the front fan be a 200 millimeter? I'd have to look at the documentation. It's probably 200. Wait, this doesn't have centimeter markings on it. Showing appears to be about can't be right. Showing about 130. It looks like take a 140. Yeah, that's a spot for a 140 millimeter fan. 200 would be too big. Buster is here. I don't see him. I see our pal Mitch Morrison has posted a picture from Hanoi. So clearly he has arrived safely in Vietnam and is enjoying his time there. Hopefully he'll send us a video soon of him just saying hello with Vietnam in the background. And you can follow Mitch Morrison on Facebook if you want to see his updates from Vietnam. He doesn't post them very often though. Luke says, Be Quiet has been very generous. Thank you from Carey's community. They've always been, you know, Be Quiet has been not only generous with parts, but they'll send us like the ugly Christmas sweater, the little toolkit, little pocket knife. I think, do I still have that little pocket knife in here? Yeah. One Christmas, Be Quiet. And I thought it was an odd thing to gift, but I really like it. Sent out these pocket knives. May all of your unboxings be bright. Oh, I guess it makes sense. You'd send a pocket knife to do the unboxing. That fits, sure. It's a really, really nice knife. What? I never showed this to you? And then, of course, to release it, you'll...
To you.
Like 2 Christmases ago.
Oh my.
It's a nice knife. That's a heavy duty. That can not only open boxes, that can defend yourself against an attacker. Yeah. That'll make more than just another belly button. You don't remember that, huh?
No.
Yeah, that was really nice of them to send that. We've had some companies send us things during the holidays, but they usually only do it once. Be Quiet's done it every year, I think, the last 4 years. Remember the ugly Christmas sweater with the fans on it? It was orange and black. And they sent one for Mitch as well. Yeah, they're great folks over there. Jim KJ3N says, that's not a knife, that's a knife. David Graham says, Be Quiet is a scary name on a knife. Let me grab a colder Gatorade here and get back to putting this water block on. Would you do me a favor and reply to in my email from Be Quiet?
Yeah.
And let them know we will use that other cooler, just not in this build. Also, let them know we received another Shadow Base 800DX. And did he intend to send a whole case just because of the RGB? Is that why he did it? It's good having Camera Girl here do some of my correspondence for me. Thermaltake's never given us anything. Anything I've shown you from Thermaltake, we've bought. Just saying. All right, so getting this back plate on. Take a look. Al Hedge says he contacted the seller for that Gothic PC case. She says, why? I don't think she's a fan. Okay, so we have our Intel installation guide here. Our AMD installation guide is here. So this is Intel in the middle. This is just an inventory of what's in the box. And then on the other side, this completes the rest of the install, whether it's Intel or AMD. Our ARGB controller, which we won't use. And then there's a motherboard sync cable. That's the one we'll use to sync the RGB with the motherboard's ARGB. So as far as the backplate, which one do we need? LGA 1700. Oh, it says LGA 1700 right on it. This says 115X, so we're not using that one. This one says LGA 1700. So I'm going to bring it up to the camera because it's more or less engraved in the black plastic, and it's hard to see it down there at the bottom. None of these are for AMD because AMD motherboards already have their own backplate. So only the backplate's only needed on Intels. And it says we need. Okay, so this piece here, there's two pieces that go around the water block that are going to mount it down onto the backplate. This one, where it's got one hole on each side, that's for AMDs. So we're not using that part. This one with the 4 slots for screws, that's what we need for socket 115X, 1200, 1700, etc. for Intel. So this, well, yeah, I mean, what else am I going to do with it? unless he wants me to send it back. He said he sent the 280 by mistake. Did you not read the email? So they're showing this piece going on opposite of the hoses. Oh, I guess the hoses would get in the way. So they're showing this piece. I don't know that this has a top or a bottom, but it shows going to the opposite side of these hoses, sliding this in this little groove, and it locks in. And so that is replaced because the mounting system for AMD CPUs is different. So in order to have sort of a one-size-fits-all design, they're giving you a lot of extra parts that you're not supposed to use unless you're using a specific type of CPU. But regardless if you're using an Intel or an AMD CPU, you're going to have leftover parts. Now there's some double-sided sticky tape, and that's to hold this backplate in place for us. That's pretty useful. And it shows that the LGA 1700 side obviously goes towards the motherboard. And what we would do is, so I'll tell you, this is a love-hate thing with me and the sticky tape here, because this is really a lifesaver when it comes to installation to hold this into position for us. Some other all-in-one designs, you know, you're going to tighten down a standoff and then the water block screws into the standoff. When they don't do that, then these just fall out. There's nothing to hold them in. But where they suck is when you have to replace your all-in-one cooler for whatever reason. If you go with the exact same cooler, you can leave this on the board and reuse it. But if you buy a different make or model, then you likely have to peel this off, and it's going to leave a bunch of residue stuck to the back of the motherboard. It's a little nerve-wracking, and then I have to get some Q-tip and rubbing alcohol and get that sticky goo off because it bothers me. But this is just going to go. I'm going to verify it. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it goes on this way or this way. Either way. It is rectangular, so it won't go on horizontally here. Except, I take it back, the motherboard is put in a non-traditional way. So, needs to go like this. If we were to put it on vertically, then these little screws that hold in the CPU socket here, these are going to hit the back of the plastic, and the plastic's going to warp. So it should make very logical sense where the cutouts are so that it doesn't, so these aren't riding up underneath this plastic. And then the other good thing is the plastic is not sticking to the motherboard, as I falsely said. It's sticking to this big metal backplate on the CPU socket, which is ideally where it's supposed to stick, not on the back of your motherboard. Because there's nothing electronic here to worry about the sticky stuff. But that'll hold that backplate in for us with that sticky tape. And the last part, I guess, is to secure the water block onto the CPU. And that means we're going to need to put thermal compound down and then remove that, that protective cover, that plastic cover that's on the bottom of the water block, and get the screws ready to tighten it down. So these screws here, these are like long screws with a standoff. These, I don't believe we use on this build. I believe those are for I stand corrected. We do use these. Yeah, we are going to use. I'm going to bring these up to the camera so you can see them up close. But essentially the way this works is you take these screws, and we're going to take the short end and screw that down into the CPU socket, that bracket we just installed. And then the long end is going to stick up, and that's where we're going to align our water block over the long part And then we have standoff type thumb screws that are going to screw down. We're going to want to tighten those up so we have a nice, firm, even pressing of the two surfaces together to optimize heat transfer so our water cooler will work as effectively as possible. Now, again, this is only a 65 watt Core i5 13500, so it's not really going to be that demanding for cooling, but it's not like anybody had a processor that ever ran too cold. So these, in this bag, these are the standoffs I'm telling you about. These are what's going to go on top of the long part of the screw to secure down the water block. And also in the bag, you'll see these black, they look like little black keys. Those are uniquely used specifically for AMD. So those little two black keys, they'll get put in the spare parts and they'll go in the motherboard box with all the other parts we're not using. So if the owner of this computer decides later that they want to use this cooler on an AMD, they'll have the parts necessary for that. I'll go ahead and just free these from their packaging. As I mentioned, these two little pieces here is our little square things. They're for AMD installs, so we're not using them today. Likely won't use them ever, but because it's a one-size-fits-all cooler, it makes it easier for you to order, right? You don't have to worry about ordering the wrong cooler for your CPU. Now, I'm going to grab these standoffs. We'll spin this around this way. I did finally speak to Gregory Howard. We've been having some trouble communicating in email, but we got that resolved. And Gregory wants to buy the little coffee maker PC from me. So once I'm done with this project, I've got another one I've got to wrap up. And then I'll do the cable management and button up the little coffee maker PC. I'll probably show it to you guys one final time, you know, when it's all buttoned up and finished to kind of give you the completed shot, if you will. And then it'll get boxed up and sent out. So I appreciate Gregory Howard for reaching out. And I think he's going to be very happy with this computer. So we're going to put one of these in each corner. Remember, there's nothing holding that back plate in other than the sticky tape, so don't push too hard in when you're tightening these up. And it's the short end we're putting in first. And these don't have any flat edges, so you can only tighten them finger tight. I'm going to step to the other side of the table and lay the case flat because that's going to make my life a lot easier. Normally, you would not do this with the computer upright. I do that so you guys can see what I'm doing, but it does make it much harder to do. Let gravity work with us here, and it's just a lot less effort, especially since the next part is putting the block on. And you're definitely going to want gravity assist. So you just turn these until they won't turn anymore by your hand. They don't have to be tightened down with pliers or anything like that. That would be unwise. You don't want to crush your motherboard. And these are going to run right up against the board. So you want them tight, but don't over tighten them. So with the 4 standoffs in place, I just want to test fit this. What I'm thinking is we go with Thermaltake wording up. Or we put the hoses down by the ram, which is a little bit more traditional, but that's going to put the Thermaltake writing sideways. Ooh, it doesn't like that one bit. So it's almost like Thermaltake has given us too much hose here, but it would look that way. Huh. I don't know if that's a cleaner look. Camera girl, what do you think? Do we want to put this in? The way they show it in the product pictures online, like on Amazon, they show this water block sideways with the hose sort of blocking the ram a little bit there. See what I'm saying? That's the traditional way. If I want to adjust it so the Thermaltake writing is upright, then I would rotate it this way. But do you think the hoses get in the way that way?
Do.
So you think it's better with the Thermaltake writing sideways?
We talked about it.
I just want you to
So,
see it.
The hoses don't look terrible, like they really don't.
You won't see the wires. Those will be tucked away. It's just these two hoses.
Right.
You see how much slack there is?
Yeah.
That to put this on sideways, I really have to fight with it because I'm kind of bunching this cable up onto itself in order for that to reach. So it's all about the looks. So you think that looks more attractive that way?
Do. Hoses.
Okay.
But again, it doesn't look bad with it right up in.
Well, this is how I see they've photographed it with it sideways. So
Yeah.
the manufacturer certainly intends it for you to install it sideways.
Right.
But you don't have to. Definitely a judgment call. So we'll use the thermal compound that Thermaltake is included, and we'll put that down onto the CPU. They don't give you much here. It looks like there's just enough for one application. But the thermal compound is biscuits. That's good. I'm going to use the entire tube. All that's in there is one application. If you screw it up, you'll have to provide your own thermal compound. Don't give you any extra. Evenly spread this thermal compound out so it's covering the CPU entirely and evenly from edge to edge. At this point, it's kind of like finger painting. We don't want to be able to see any of the silver heat sink underneath, or heat spreader, I should say. And then I tap up and down on it, and it creates little hills and valleys. And what that's going to do is when we squish the water block down on top of it, those hills and valleys will be, or the hills rather, will be compressed down and fill in any gaps. So we don't have to worry about air bubbles. Not that that's going to, again, really make a measurable difference. People seem obsessed with some weird stuff online, and it's easier to just appease them than to try and talk to reason with them. So we'll just, if you can't beat them, join them kind of a thing there. So I'm removing the protective material now. And, this was a pretty easy all-in-one install. You certainly see me curse out some of the installs of all-in-one coolers that took way too much intense labor to get secured. So they've got a good mounting system here. Give them credit for that. I'm going to just hold that in position, and I'll start putting the thumb screws on the ends here. Don't tighten them down yet. You just want to get them all started. Troll McTrollington with $3.50 Canadian. He says, pity the fool who can't buy his own compound. Well, look, you just dropped 100 and whatever bucks on a cooler. I don't think you should have to additionally buy thermal compound, in my opinion. So all I want to do is get these thumb screws started. Once they're all started, then we want to start tightening down evenly in opposite corners. If you start to tighten one side down too far, you may find it near impossible getting an opposite corner started. So that's why you want to go take it real easy and real gentle until the screws are all started, or until all of the standoffs, the thumb screws are started. Then we can start tightening down. And as I mentioned, we want to do opposite corners. I don't want to tighten down all the way, not yet. It's when I tighten them down more. When you get to the last one, you can tighten the last one down all the way, then go to the opposite corner. Go ahead and tighten that one down all the way. Pick another opposite corner, tighten that one down all the way. Oh, that one was not as far down as I thought it was. And then finally, our last one. Now I'm going to go back over one more time because sometimes some of the screws will loosen up when you tighten the others. It's pretty common, so you just want to double check. You want that to be a nice, firm, solid amount of pressure evenly across the entire surface of that CPU. You want to get the best cooling out of your cooler. That looks pretty good. All right, let's see. This, what is this? This, what is this? This looks like power cable that goes to our fan and the RGB cable that goes to our fan. Then we have this cable that's going to our block. This cable, which is going to power the block. Very good. Let's see. Clear this stuff out of my way. So this power cable, I think the easiest way to run this, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, isn't it? Curious what this will look like. I guess the pump is the first header. And what I'm debating about is the way I'm running this power cable to the water block. I could run it this way and out the back and then around behind the board, or I could run it as I ran it here around these support posts to try and eat up as much of the slack as possible. Then that leaves me with just a little bit left over there. Looks pretty good, I think. And this cable, again, there's going to be a little bit of a challenge to hide these. Not all that attractive going that way. I think no matter what, I'm going to be kind of stuck here with, I suppose the downside of the hoses facing down like that is we don't have any exit strategy for these cables to cleanly run. We have to go over or alongside of something. And this cable is too wide to fit between the hose and the RAM. So I need to take this RAM module out for a second. Then run the cable sideways, I guess. Suppose I could follow the same pattern. Run it up and around posts. That's not my first choice, but I see a better option here. It's fitting in there very, very tightly. Something plastic that I can use to push in on it. So what I'm thinking is, you know, I run this cable around the same way I ran the power cable, and then we can run it out the back right here. And then we can do all of our cable connections here in the back where we have a lot of room for cable management. And then that back panel is going to go on and completely hide it, but at the same time, still make it easy to work on. Sometimes I've seen some cable management jobs that make the system extraordinarily difficult to work on without undoing, and very carefully undoing all of the wire ties, cutting them without cutting through the cable to free up something that needs replacement, upgrading. So I think it's going to be the direction I'm going to choose here. And now I can put that other RAM module back in. I'm concerned that I'm pinching that cable. I just want to verify I can get up underneath of it. Did you see that thing jump out of my hands? Yeah, okay. So we're not pinching it, it's fine. Voila. So these pieces and these pieces we don't use on today's build. What did I do with that plastic bag? Put it over here somewhere, didn't I? Now in this bag, let's see what we have here. So this is our switch that controls the speed, the color, and the mode. And you'll see it's got a SATA power cable. And then this plug, that's what's going to light up the RGB. Or we have this cable. This is the one we want to use. And well, unfortunately, this ARGB header doesn't give one back to us. So what that means is when I plug this ARGB header in, which goes up here, and we run that cable, let's say, out this way, we have a proprietary connector that stinks. And the reason, well, first of all, it stinks. They've given us a black cable whenever all the other cables are white. So I don't think Thermaltake thought this through. They're taking our ARGB header. Now, normally when they take one, they give one. So you have a male and female on the same cable, so you can string them together. They're taking it. They're not giving anything back. They are giving a 3-pin back for their own fans, but not for our RGB SSD, which stinks. So this cable and this cable will plug in together. So, and then this female one here will plug into the water block cable, which should be back here somewhere. Yes. And again, that one's going to take one and give one, but why they're not using the industry standard ARGB connector? I mean, they probably think their connector is superior because it clicks in and a regular ARGB does not. It's also smaller. But how am I supposed to feed off of this back to another ARGB device so they can all synchronize? That's the problem. So that Lightsaber SSD may not be a good choice for this build if it means that I can't synchronize it. Might have to find a little research online, find a solution for that. But that means we don't use this cable. Now, if I use this cable, I won't use the ARGB header, but that means I'm controlling the lighting on the cooler and cooler fan only, while the rest of the RGB on the board and the SSD will not synchronize to that. So you use one cable or the other, you don't use them both. And this shows that it's compatible. The ARGB connector is compatible with ASUS, ASRock, MSI, and Gigabyte ARGB headers. So that pretty much covers the gamut of motherboard compatibility. All right, so we're gonna have a lot of slack cable here that will, I think for right now, I'm just gonna bunch it up. What's this? This is the fan, isn't it? So this fan can plug in. I want to this way. Go in under here. Go to one of our extra fan headers we've got here on the side of the board. And then I will take all of this slack, and just so it's out of my way for the build, I'm not going to leave it this way, but I'm going to just grab one of the wire ties I removed, just put it temporarily back on and have it hold it out of my way so it doesn't get laying on the desk, and I rotate the Lazy Susan, it ends up knocking everything off the desk. So there's that. That. I'm going to have to figure out a solution on this ARGB SSD. We have our front port umbilicals up here. And these are going to run, how are we going to see. Our USB 3 header has to plug in all the way down here. So to get there, we'll run through the hole here in the back. I'm wondering if I have to run it through this hole or if I can, are there cutouts in here that will enable me still hide the cable? Yes, it looks like. Run through this top hole right up here. I think all of these will run through this, if I'm not mistaken. USB 3.1 cable, our HD audio cable, and then our power switch, reset switch, power LED, and hard drive LED. What you got to keep in mind is you're going to be feeding your power cable, your keyboard, your mouse, all those cables are going to go in through here. And I'm trying to keep this area free because this is the I/O shield. This is where all our I/O is. And so they've given us a bunch of little bridges here to attach wire ties so we can tie these cables up and keep them along the edge so they're not dropping down in here. When you're trying to hook up some stuff, you don't want these cables in your way. That was thoughtful for them to put those there. So with the USB 3 cable, we can run that right out through this grommet. Grab this and place it. Let's see, the notch has got to go up. Then we'll grab the USB 3.1. That's this flat cable. Or USB Type C front port header cable is what this is. Run that one through as well. It's right beside it on this board. It's in. We've got our front port audio cable. And on this motherboard, that is going to plug in way up here in the top left corner. So I think the easiest way to route us there cleanly see. I think it's just going to be to come in right here. Now, when it comes time to doing the cable management, I'll just have to wait and see how it looks when it's built, because I might choose a different route for the cable to run, or I might tie it up against something that holds it against one of the support pillars here, just to keep it from being seen from this angle as much as possible. And then our front power switch, reset switch, power LED, hard drive LED, all of that plugs in way down by the RAM. It's a very tight fit. So we're going to run this the same way. We'll run it all the way down. Not seeing it. Oh, I remember. It's right up against the solid state drive. Yeah. It's way up, right beside the hard drive, the high definition audio cable. HD audio cable right here. Just below that is our front port umbilicals. I knew it was a tight fit. I was thinking it was against the RAM, but it's a tight fit against this SSD. So we want these cables, front port switches, come in right through here. And once again, when it comes time to do the cable management, I might reroute it, or I might zip tie them against one of the support pillars here. Whatever has the cleanest look. Get it around those cables. My life easier when it comes to cable management if I'm not weaving in and out of these cables. Times like this, I really appreciate that NZXT front port header where it's just one connector, because putting on the power LED in particular, pretty difficult because each one goes on separately. At least the others are in pairs. That is a really tight fit. Okay, that's the power LED. Now, how about the hard drive LED? I'll go on right below it. Positive cable going to the side edge. Cable's getting in its own way. Hard drive LED. Next, I'll put on the power switch that goes right beside the power LED. Oh, that is a tight fit. And then the reset switch is the last one, and that goes on right beside the hard drive LED. One on. There it goes. So as you can imagine, I mean, that's right next to our solid state drive where eyes are going to be drawn, and we have all these cables there. So we'll have to get a little creative to pull these cables back, all back here. So we'll probably tuck those up a little bit, maybe wire tie, zip tie them up. It'll look pretty clean, I think. So finally, we have the power supply cables, which I have down here on the floor. I just need the main motherboard 24-pin power cable and the 8-pin CPU power cable. So here is our motherboard power. Oh, are they including CPU power? What the heck? This is confusing. No. Okay, that's the extra 4-pin. That's going to go on there. So that will go on the bottom here. So, and then the rest of this will run right out through this cable management grommet. It's like that. And then we would run this, I guess, just along the side here. Bring it around to the back of the power supply. Which for us, we'll need this cable plugged in here. Maybe easier to take the power supply out to hook these up. Yeah, I think I'll take the power supply out. And then this is our CPU power cable. The rest of these power cables, you would use them, for example, if you're put a GPU on there, and if you're putting any SATA storage drives or other RGB items that need to light up. Otherwise, we only need the 2 power cables. Yeah, let me go ahead and, before I take this out, let me go ahead and run this CPU power cable. Oh, McTrollington with $3.50 Canadian says, by the name of Grayskull, you have the power. The power. Gregory Howard contributes a $5 super chat, says, I made it back. Well, welcome back, Gregory. We've been waiting. All right. So only one side of this plugs to the motherboard. The side that has the 2 connectors on it, that's your motherboard side. You can also tell because this can split into 2 4-pin connectors. This power supply side doesn't split. It's one cable. Don't get them backwards. It makes your life much more difficult than it needs to be. And this CPU power cable is going to go on. I'll feed it in. It's right under here like this. Once again, you got to be a little creative when it comes to cable management time. And that's why I typically won't show the cable management on camera, because there's really nothing you can see. And I might reroute a cable 3 or 4 different ways until I like it. So now this cable, route it straight underneath here. So now I can just temporarily take the power supply out and plug the other ends of these cables in, and we're effectively done. Things can be, essentially, if everything works, I still have to figure out the ARGB on the SSD, and then the cable management, and then put the panels back on. But this should be the end of it right here, as far as the build process goes. So I guess I will take this piece out. I could probably squeeze my hands in there and do it, but I don't want to bend any of the metal up. And Really not a big deal to remove 4 screws and slide the power supply out. And with the power supply slid out of there, it's just a lot easier to grab our CPU power cable and plug that in, and then grab our motherboard power cable. Oh, I got to think about this for a minute. I won't be able to slide this in unless I run the cable through this little area first. So this has to come through here, because remember, we're going to slide the power supply back in here. Devil's in the details, or you'll be taking it all back apart again. Just want to try and keep it from twisting, because that's going to make it look cleaner. So that's our CPU power cable. Now that can plug in here. Sure, it went up. And then the main power motherboard power cable, also feed that in as well. Getting a little hairy back here with these cables. This GAMEMAX power supply gives you some pretty long cables, far longer than we needed. So it does add a little bit more effort into the cable management. But we do have this big basement to conceal it all in. There's that power cable and that. And now, slide this back in. Okay. So I suppose if there's one thing I don't like about this all-in-one cooler, it's that proprietary connector when they should be using a standard ARGB connector. Because they have robbed us of our ability now to hook up another RGB device to the ARGB without purchasing a splitter, or, you know, I might be able to use the other RGB header here, or maybe not. No, we won't be able to, because this hole is actually blocked. They won't let us plug into the 4-pin. So we're not going to hook up the RGB on the SSD for right now. Looks like I'll have to buy a separate cable, an ARGB splitter from Amazon. But that is our entire build. You see what a mess of cables we got back there. But remember, that whole thing will be covered up. And we also have this plate we took off in part 1. We can use that to sort of pin the cables back as well. Not that anybody's going to see that part. So let's go ahead and plug it in and turn it on. Make sure we didn't break anything. So I need a keyboard and a mouse. Here and right here. I have the dongle. Did I leave it in the board? I did. Okay. Step around and we'll grab the HDMI cable, the power cable. Let's see. Ethernet. So remember, the cables are going to feed into the back of the machine this way. But for right now, since we don't have the back on it, I can cheat. That, and HDMI there, and then finally power here. Flip the switch to on. Tangle myself up in cables here. Let's go over to HDMI input. Right here, I'll put camera 1. I'll get ready to put camera 1 in the corner, but let's just see if everything lights up like it's supposed to. Oh yeah, we got some RGB happening there. It's dead quiet. Holy cow. Does that look from? You want to come look?
It needs to.
You see the RAM's lit up? Lock
Yeah,
is,
that's cool. I like it.
how about now?
Yeah, I like the fact that it's all white. RGB.
And it's quiet. You hear it at all?
No, I hate.
Yeah, well, that's going to be the cable management to be a little bit of a tricky part, and then trying to figure out,
It's a beautiful computer.
yeah, trying to figure out how we're going to,
The very minimal RGB,
well, we're supposed to have the RGB on the SSD, but
but that's okay.
we don't have anywhere to plug that
Oh,
in.
you don't have any.
So I either need an
Oh.
ARGB splitter or swap the SSD out for something
Yeah,
else.
swap it out.
You think?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like I'll have a hard time trying to
I
figure
like it. It's simple, classy. It makes a very mild.
Yeah, you definitely haven't. I haven't seen
I'm glad
anything.
you went with the.
I haven't seen anything like it. It's definitely
Yeah.
unique, and
It's
it's
a
easy.
nice case. It's looks easy. And it on a desk or
I agree. I think it'll look good anywhere. And
that's just a little bit bigger than a mini PC, and it's got class enough to look good in.
yeah, well, it'll look great when it's finished.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe swap that SSD out. Maybe put
Yeah.
a Beijing in there or something.
Yeah,
maybe
that's
or
fine.
some Gen 4
Yeah. And
something.
you can look for RGB.
They're all going to need some form of synchronizing the
Okay.
RGB. Now, if we were to put a different SSD in there, then we'd want to put the heatsink back on that the board came with. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
Or
like
I
it.
can figure out how to get this hooked up some way.
I think it's so it's a great piece.
So Mara approved?
Yes, very
right.
much more.
I appreciate the feedback. All right, let's see. What do we? Greg Jimmy says, hello, stopping in to say hi. Just got done eating dinner before you decide to tell any more scary black slime dishwasher stories. Imagine guy said system looks good. Well, you can just picture it, with the panels put back on it and the cabling cleaned up. It should be a pretty nice looking system, We can visualize this a little bit more if we this up here. Kind of like that. I like that we have a hard drive LED. We're seeing more and more cases not including those. And yeah, the rest is just cleanup, essentially. And then again, deciding if I want to pull the solid state drive out and just stick with a standard solid state drive, or if I want to commit to this RGB and look for an ARGB splitter. We've got plenty of room back here for cable management. And one of the difficulties or discouraging parts of RGB for me is all the additional cables and trying to find clever ways to hide them. But here, that's not an issue. They could all be just shoved back there and throw the back panel on, and it's going to look clean to anybody except the person that opens it. Imagine guy said it's quick too. It booted up in less than 10 seconds. Yeah, let's do a shutdown and a restart on it and see how long it takes. We could also check for updates being, as I mentioned earlier, it's the second Tuesday of the month. That's when Microsoft releases patches to Windows. Patch Tuesday, they call it. Old Man 55 said it might take 3 more days for cable cleanup. Nah, I don't think. There's probably maybe an hour and a half of labor to get those cables cleaned up. Let's go to Windows Update and see. Getting some updates today. Oh, there they are. Let's go full screen. And if there's any additional, 0 additional. Okay. So we'll let that download. If anybody has any comments or questions, we'll do that now. And then we will wrap it up for today. I'm not sure if I'm live tomorrow or not. I have to get a couple of computers buttoned up out to customers. And as I mentioned, I'll be leaving later tonight to go to one of my clients after hours, so I'm not interrupting their workday to get some really minor work done, but it needs to be done. And yeah, so I don't know about Wednesday or Thursday. I will definitely be live on Friday at 1 o'clock for sure. And I will likely be live Wednesday and Thursday, but I don't want to commit to it yet because I'm not sure. We do have the machine, the mini PC that just arrived from Minis Forum today. And I don't have all the parts I need to finish up the Be Quiet build, so that won't happen this week. May not happen for a couple weeks. And I have 2 more computers to ship out. So that's my schedule right now for this week. Greg Ukwe says, I think my wife's build is going to use an i5 13500. I'm telling you, that's the best bang for the buck right now, in my opinion. They're $247, and I wouldn't be surprised if it drops to $209 again for Amazon Prime Day. I don't have any evidence to back that up other than they did it last year or last Prime Day in July. I think they'll do it again. But even at $247, it's a great price. Remember, it comes with a cooler, so you don't have to spend money on a cooler if you don't want to. I'm just going for a certain look here. Ooh, I can feel that air coming out at the top. That's working. That cooler is definitely overkill for this processor. Andy Kane wants to know if extension CPUs that split into 2x4, is it okay to connect? I don't understand your question. If you have a link you want to share, I assume that an extension cable is intended to be used. So I don't know why they would sell you an extension cable you couldn't use. So I'm kind of baffled. I don't understand your question. Someone whose name is in another language, I don't even know these letters. I installed a Thermaltake Phantom Spirit 120 in a PC just yesterday, but I did a sloppy job at putting on the thermal paste. I'm going to have to do it again as I put on way too much. Well, that's okay. Pretty easy to clean it up. Thermal paste is cheap. Will I need power for the pump? It's getting power from the header on the motherboard. We plugged the pump directly into the CPU fan header. Or in this motherboard, it actually has a water pump header. So the water pump is getting power the same way a CPU fan gets power. And you can hold on to these cables and you can feel the water flow through them. We just want to make sure we go into the BIOS and make sure that it knows that that's a water pump, because we don't want the voltage going up and down, slowing the pump down and speeding it up depending on the temperature of the CPU. We want it full speed at all times. Now, whether we get that power directly out of the power supply or out of the motherboard, it's the same power from the same source. Some water block makers force you to have to use a power connector from the power supply. That's silly when you already have a power connector on the board for your CPU fan, and you should just be able to put that on to full speed or set it to water block mode, all-in-one pump mode. So when this is done installing, we'll go into the BIOS and I'll show you where that is, and we'll just make sure that it's set that way. We want that full speed at all times. But the fan, that's also plugged into the motherboard. The motherboard can speed and slow that fan depending on how hot the CPU is. But the pump always runs full speed. Are the pipes resting on the RAM? No, the pipes are not touching the RAM. They're very close. It is a tight fit, and it's always going to be a tight fit when it comes to an ITX build. But no, they're just a hair away. I can slide a piece of paper between them. Also, even if the hoses were up against the RAM, as long as we're not putting too much pressure on it, right? If they're just resting, that's fine. If we're putting pressure against the RAM, that absolutely is unacceptable, and you'd want to rotate the block away. Some coolers, the hoses stick out further than other coolers. And on this one, you know, we have a combination of two things. One, we have heatsink on that RAM that bows out a little bit, so that RAM's a little wider as a result. Now, the heatsink itself, the hoses could be closer to the block, honestly. They stick out a little further. But if you look at any of the online images where they sell these cases where they've got a block, a water block installed, they're almost universally all installed in this orientation. I'm not exactly sure why. I guess it's most aesthetically pleasing. If it bothers you, you could certainly rotate it, but it's not going to hurt anything in that orientation. But that's the beauty of the PC. You know, there's not just one way. It's not rigid where you have to do things your way or this person's way. You do it any way you want, as long as you're within the reasonable tolerance allowed. There wouldn't be any concern as far as damage to the RAM. Yeah. This isn't experimental equipment. This is all consumer grade stuff. So it's pretty tolerant. Some people are just a little bit more uptight than others when it comes to stuff like that. And that's okay, because you're allowed to be. And when it's your system, you can do it any way you want. Being a system builder professionally, I have to stand behind and warranty the work I do. And any repairs that come in under warranty, I do at my cost. So I'm financially incentivized to want to continue eating and for my customers to be happy and buy again. So I wouldn't send a machine out if I thought, you know, there was a potential of long-term damage from something leaning on something else. But it is close. It is absolutely very close. Randall says it sure boots fast. Well, it's got that fast Seagate FireCuda SSD in there. Randall wants to know if I can check the temps. Yeah, I imagine these temps are going to be crazy cool. Let me take a look, first of all, what we're doing on our updates. It looks like it wants us to reboot here. So we definitely want to take care of that first. Whoops. Full screen over here. So I can't see that screen very well. Yeah, it wants to restart. Let's go ahead and let that finish those updates. And we can run Prime 95 on it again. I imagine it's going to run way cooler than it did before. At least by 10 degrees, I would guess. I really don't understand what the internet's fascination is with computer temperatures. I've fixed very few computer problems that had anything to do with temperature, but the way people talk about it online is you would honestly think that that was a real problem people have. It isn't. The last time I had a computer come in with a problem related to heat was about 4 years ago. I don't know why people are so fixated with this. I don't think it's healthy. It's just a bizarre thing to be worried about. Now, out of curiosity, just to wonder, because we saw what the air cooler can do. How does the liquid cooler do? This CPU itself doesn't need a liquid cooler. So it's probably going to be quite a difference between this and the air cooler. But the air cooler was fine too. Paul O'Brien contributes €2. He says, so you don't starve. Oh, thank you, Paul. Ray Burke wants to know, is there a way to kill the pop-ups when playing her games that keep popping up? I need to know what the game is that's playing and what the pop-ups are that you're seeing. Some of the games that are free are paid for by the pop-ups. If you paid for a game, then it would make sense you would not expect the pop-ups. But I don't know what you're referring to as pop-ups. I don't know what game you're talking about. I don't know what operating system you're talking about. So that is such a vague question. For me to provide you a specific answer that would be useful to you, you'd have to provide me a more specific question. Would you mind checking the front door? Andy says, I got an extension cable that splits 2 4 connectors. Is it the correct cable I'm using? As you've just, I still don't know what you're talking about. Sorry, Andy, I have no idea what you're referring to. If you want to post a link to the product you're asking about, I'm sure that the product has a product description that explains how to use it, but I can't even picture what you're saying. Paul O'Brien wants me to check my email. Okay. An Amazon gift card for $10 from Paul O'Brien. Right on. Thank you for that. Barry Klein sent an Amazon gift card. He says, thanks for helping me launch my new certification program today. My new marketing phrase is BK plus certification, twice as many letters as A plus, so twice as good. Seriously, though, he says, I always enjoy your live streams. Very nice community of people in the chat and always interesting content with a $25 Amazon gift card. Hey, thank you, Barry. I've got an email from Davis Parsons I'll respond to after the broadcast. And Alan Lindos with a $7.77 Amazon gift card. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you very much. I think my landscapers just arrived. Oh, the folks over at TerraMaster have asked us to review their NAS, and I guess that just showed up today. All right. So we're going to get a lot of noise here soon because our landscapers just showed up. So very quickly, I'll just take a quick run at the temps, utilities. Of course, I'll buy a license for this computer. I'll buy a Windows 10 Pro license from VIP CDK Deals using my coupon code CAREY. Comes out to about 16, 17 bucks. And I'll use that Windows 10 Pro license code to activate this Windows 11 Pro. Do we have the garage door closed? Can we close it? Because the landscapers are here and they're going to probably blow a lot of leaves and stuff in there. Okay, so Prime 95 and HW. Bring up HW monitor. I'm sure our idle temps are going to be ridiculously low. Plug my utilities flash drive. Where are we at on these temps? Oh, it's super chilly. Wow, that is only 20 degrees. Holy cow. All right, let me bring up Prime 95. Get a 9. Oh, the Elon Musk book arrived. Cool. I expect these temps are going to be ridiculously low. Again, given that the air cooler still kept us at 85 or below, I expect a liquid cooler will probably keep us at 75 or below, even may not even break 70. So we know it's working. Everything looks good. It is an overkill cooler for the CPU. All right. I think that's going to wrap it up for us. It's going to get loud here with all the landscaping equipment. So I think it's a good time for me to bid you all adieu for today. Thank you again for all the contributions and support. And as I mentioned, if you're interested in buying any of the systems I have for sale, I have a number of 10th gen i7 and i9 10th gen systems, and those I will be severely discounting. And then I have the 13500 systems I've been building, both in the NZXT white case, the NZXT black case, and in the Thermaltake case here. Once those are cable managed, they're ready to go. So it's a great way for you to get a piece of the channel and also have a really, really good, fast, quiet machine that's easily upgradable, that you could do yourself, could last many, many years. So do reach out to me privately in my email if you want to discuss options there. And again, for all of the super chat contributions, a shout out one more time to Paul O'Brien, Troll McTrollington, Gregory Howard, Troll McTrollington again. Mats Olof contributed 100 Swedish krona. Thank you, Mats Olof. I think I missed that earlier. David Dix, thank you for your super chat. Peter VZ and George Schloika. Iron Tigers. Thank you to Dwayne Blackwelder for renewing membership now for 10 months. Paul O'Brien, thank you again. Planet Cryos and Ben Laird, thank you guys so much for your support of the channel, your super chat contributions, and finally, for the PayPal and Amazon gift cards that have come in. Thank you to Alan Lindos, Barry Klein, Paul O'Brien again, Ralph Kirby, Davis Parsons, Thomas Tidwell, and Luke Greenia. And of course, a shout out to our friend Peter Laycock out there in Scotland, who I'm sure will be watching the video later. Thank you for your support and for being a part of this amazing community that we've created here. I'll look forward to seeing you all very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.